The galaxy was wide, cold, and full of secrets, but humans were still newcomers among the stars. Their colonies were young, their ships small compared to the grand fleets of ancient alien empires. Most species saw humans as reckless children, strong in body but weak in wisdom. Captain Arik knew this well. He had heard the whispers whenever he walked through alien space stations. A human soldier? Brave maybe, but foolish. Still, he carried himself with quiet pride. He believed that one day humanity would prove itself, not with words but with actions. On a silent evening aboard the orbital base of Calith Prime, Arik was called into the command chamber. The summons itself was unusual. Human soldiers were rarely asked to step into such places, where the great alien diplomats and rulers planned their future. He walked with firm steps, but inside he felt unease. The air was heavy with the scent of strange flowers and humming crystals that pulsed with soft blue light. At the center of the chamber sat an alien unlike any he had ever seen before. Her skin shimmered like silver glass, her eyes deep and endless as though holding whole galaxies inside them. She was Lady Serenia, diplomat of the Veiri Empire, one of the most ancient and feared civilizations in the known stars. Arik stopped at the edge of the glowing circle and saluted, unsure if such gestures mattered to her. Serenia studied him with calm curiosity, her long hands folded on the table. Around her, alien officials murmured in disapproval. A human soldier here? Protecting her? Impossible. Yet Serenia's voice cut through their whispers like a blade. This one will do, she said simply. Captain Arik will guard me. The chamber fell silent. Arik's heart pounded. Guard her? He had been trained for battle, for patrols, for defending borders. But guarding an alien diplomat, one of the most important figures in the galaxy, was far beyond anything he had imagined. Before he could speak, an elder from the Veiri leaned forward, his eyes glowing like burning coals. Lady Serenia, with respect, this is dangerous. The human is untested. If he fails, the shame will not be his alone. It will stain his whole species. Arik's jaw tightened. He could feel the weight of their doubt pressing against him, heavier than any armor. Serenia did not flinch. Then it is simple, she replied. He will not fail. That was the moment his life changed. He was given no time to argue, no chance to refuse. Orders were handed down quickly. He would escort Lady Serenia to the capital of the Veiri Empire. There she would speak at a council that could decide the future of interspecies relations. Her life was already under threat. Shadows moved in the dark corners of politics, and assassins had already tried to silence her voice. That was why she needed protection. That was why she had chosen him. As he walked out of the chamber, the alien guards brushed past him, their eyes sharp with mistrust. One muttered a warning, his voice like gravel. Listen well, human. Fail her and your kind will not be forgiven. Not for 1,000 years Arik kept walking, but the words burned in his mind. This was no simple mission. If he failed, humanity itself might be cast out, barred forever from standing equal in the galaxy. The pressure was crushing, yet deep inside a spark of defiance lit within him. Humans were always underestimated. He had grown up hearing the stories of Earth's long history, how fragile humans had faced storms, wars, and endless struggle, yet survived. Perhaps this was why Serenia had chosen him. Later that night, when the stars outside the station glowed like frozen diamonds, Arik met Serenia in the private hangar. The ship that waited for them was sleek, alien, and alive with soft pulses of light. She moved gracefully, her silver form almost floating as she stepped aboard. Arik followed, his boots heavy against the shining floor. For a while, neither spoke. The silence stretched until Serenia turned her gaze toward him. You wonder why I chose you, she said softly. Arik did not answer. He wasn't sure what to say. She tilted her head slightly, her eyes glowing faintly. Your people are new to the stars. The others mock you. But I have seen something in humans that the galaxy has forgotten. Her voice lowered to a whisper. A fire. A courage that burns even when logic says there is no hope. Arik's chest tightened. He wanted to believe her, but he also knew the dangers ahead. Assassins in the dark, traitors in the council, enemies who wanted Serenia dead before she could speak. Still, he met her eyes and nodded once. Then I'll protect you, he said. With my life. Serenia's lips curved in the faintest smile. Yes, she said, as though she had already seen the truth in some hidden future. You will. And so the mission began. One man, one alien diplomat, and the weight of two species balanced on the thin edge of survival. The ship glided through the dark sea of space, its silver hull glowing faintly under distant starlight. Inside, silence ruled the corridors. Captain Arik walked with steady steps, his boots echoing against the strange alien metal. Every sound felt louder here, every breath heavy as though the ship itself was watching. He was used to human vessels full of noise and life, but this ship was too quiet, too perfect. That silence was not comforting, it was unsettling. Lady Serenia moved gracefully ahead of him, her long robes trailing behind like flowing silver smoke. She did not seem afraid. Her face was calm, her gaze fixed on some unseen horizon. But the alien guards who walked along the edges of the corridor were not like her. Their eyes darted nervously, hands tightening on their weapons. Arik noticed the way they whispered in their own tongue, their voices sharp and tense. He could not understand the words, but he understood fear. Something about this mission was already wrong. When they entered the main chamber, Serenia sat quietly at the center, surrounded by a circle of shimmering lights. Arik stood by the door, alert. The guards lined the walls, but none dared to meet his eyes. He could feel their mistrust like a blade pressed to his back. Humans were not welcome here. They thought him too weak, too simple. But Arik did not care about their opinions. His focus was on the Diplomat. Hours passed and the silence deepened. Then small things began to happen. The lights flickered for just a moment, dimming and flaring back again. At first, no one spoke of it. Then the air changed, colder, sharper. Arik noticed his breath fog for an instant before the ship corrected itself. He watched closely, his instincts screaming. These were not accidents. Someone was testing the systems, probing, waiting. That night, while Serenia rested in her private chamber, Arik remained on guard outside her door. The corridor stretched long and empty, shadows clinging to the walls. His hand rested on his weapon, his eyes fixed ahead. That was when he saw it, a flicker of movement at the far corner. He froze, muscles tense. For a heartbeat, there was nothing. Then the shadow shifted again, smooth and silent. Someone was there. Arik stepped forward, slow and careful. His boots made no sound. The figure vanished around the bend, but he followed, every nerve alive. The corridor seemed to stretch longer with each step, the silence pressing against him like weight. Finally, he turned the corner and found nothing. Empty walls, silent lights, but on the floor, faint and nearly invisible, was a small black shard. He bent down, picking it up. The shard was sharp, metal, but not from the ship. It was part of a blade. He returned to his post, more certain than ever. This was not a simple escort mission. There were enemies already on board, hiding in the dark. Serenia's enemies had found a way inside. The next day, the systems failed for a full minute. The lights cut out, the air grew thin, and panic spread through the alien guards. Arik stood firm, his hand on Serenia's chair, shielding her in the dark. He could hear the guards whispering again, voices filled with fear. One of them muttered words that made even Serenia raise her head. Arik did not know the language, but he understood the tone. They were losing trust. They believed this ship was cursed, and that Serenia's choice of a human protector had doomed them. When the systems returned, Serenia rose, her calm voice breaking the fear. "We continue," she said. The guards lowered their heads, but Arik could see their doubt growing stronger. Later in private, Arik confronted her. "There's someone on this ship," he said firmly. "It's not an accident. Someone wants you dead." Serenia looked at him, her silver eyes shining faintly in the dim light. "Yes," she said quietly. "I know," her answer shook him. She had known from the beginning. Yet she had said nothing, done nothing. "Then why haven't you told them?" Arik demanded, pointing toward the guards outside. "Because they already fear too much," Serenia replied. "Fear breaks loyalty. But you, Captain Arik, you do not let fear rule you. That is why you are here." Her words stayed with him through the long hours of silence that followed. He could feel the ship alive around him, shadows waiting, unseen hands preparing their strike. The guards would break if the enemy came, but he could not afford to break. Humanity's honor now rested on his shoulders. That night, as the ship drifted through endless darkness, Arik stood again outside Serenia's chamber. His weapon was ready, his mind sharper than ever. Somewhere out there in the cold corridors of the alien ship, a killer was waiting. And Arik knew the truth. When the attack came, he would be standing alone. It began with a faint vibration under the ship's floor, so small most would not notice, but Arik felt it. He had lived through too many border raids not to know the sound of intruders. His hand moved to his weapon before the lights above suddenly flickered red. The alarm did not ring. The ship's system stayed silent as though blind. That was the first proof this was no malfunction. It was sabotage. Arik's voice cut through the quiet. Get ready. They're here. The alien guards looked at him, confused, hesitant, but Serenia did not question. She rose from her seat slowly, calm even as fear spread among her escort. The chamber's doors hissed. The air grew colder and then shadows moved at the edges of the light. Black-clad figures slipped through the corridors, their armor thin but sharp, their masks glowing faintly. Assassins. The first blade flashed before the guards reacted. A guard fell, throat cut open, body crumpling before he even screamed. Panic broke out instantly. 2 more guards stumbled back, firing wildly into the shadows. The assassins danced between the shots, fast, silent, like hunters trained for centuries. Arik did not hesitate. He surged forward, drawing his weapon and firing in a single motion. 1 assassin fell back, armor sparking, but 2 more closed in. Their blades sang as they swung, glowing edges slicing the air. Arik ducked, rolled, and shot one through the chest. The other lunged. The alien guards faltered. Their fear was louder than the battle itself. Some hid behind the pillars, others fired blindly, hitting walls more than enemies. Serenia stood still in the center, unflinching, her silver form glowing faintly as though untouched by chaos. Arik fought his way to her, his body moving on instinct, every step a defiance of death. 1 assassin struck from above, leaping down with a blade aimed at Serenia's heart. Arik threw himself forward, taking the strike across his arm. Pain burned white-hot, but he shoved the attacker back with sheer strength, firing a point-blank shot that tore the masked figure apart. Blood sprayed across the silver floor. Serenia's gaze met his for a brief second. Surprise. Then something deeper. Respect. But there was no time to think. More came, 5, maybe 6, slipping from every shadow. Arik's weapon hissed empty. He swung it like a club, smashing one across the mask, then drew his knife in the same breath. The assassin hissed, striking with lightning speed, but Arik blocked, countered, and drove the blade into the figure's chest. The body dropped, lifeless. The guards finally moved, emboldened by the human's defiance. They shouted in their tongue, rallying, firing with more aim. Yet it was Arik who held the line, bleeding, bruised, but unbroken. His breaths were heavy, his muscles burning, but his will was steel. Every strike, every shot was a message. You will not take her. The last assassin tried a desperate move, vanishing in the smoke before appearing behind Serenia. Arik saw it in the reflection of her silver eyes. He did not think, he moved. His body slammed into hers, throwing her to the ground as the blade pierced his side instead. A flash of agony ripped through him, but his knife found the attacker's throat. The assassin fell, twitching, blood pooling dark on the shining floor. Silence returned, broken only by heavy breaths. The floor was scattered with alien bodies, guards and assassins alike. Smoke hung in the air, sharp with the scent of burned metal and blood. Arik stumbled, gripping his wound, his vision blurring. Yet he stood tall, refusing to fall before her. Serenia rose slowly, her glowing eyes fixed on him. The guards gathered, shaken, their faces pale. Not one of them had stood as firm as the human. You bleed for me, Serenia said softly, stepping closer. Why? Arik's breath was ragged. His side burned, his arm throbbed, but his eyes met hers with steady fire. Because it's my duty. Because if I don't, no one else will. For the first time, Serenia's calm mask cracked. A faint smile touched her lips, but it was not mockery. It was something else. Recognition, the guards whispered among themselves. Their eyes on Arik with something new, something they had never given a human before. Respect. But in the corners of the chamber, hidden systems sparked again. The lights flickered. Serenia's expression darkened. This was only the beginning, she said quietly. Arik tightened his grip on his weapon, ignoring the blood dripping from his wound. He understood. The assassins were not finished. Whoever wanted Serenia dead would not stop now, and the next strike would be worse. The chamber smelled of smoke and blood. The assassins' bodies were gone, dragged away by trembling guards, but their shadows still seemed to cling to the walls. Captain Arik stood at his post, bandages wrapped around his side and arm. His wounds burned with every movement, but he stayed silent, alert. He had promised to protect Lady Serenia, and pain would not break that promise. The guards whispered in corners, their voices low and sharp. They avoided Arik's gaze, but he could feel their eyes on him. Before the attack, they had seen him as nothing, just a human, weak and untested. Now their whispers carried a different weight. They had watched him fight, watched him bleed for someone who was not even of his kind. Still, respect was mixed with suspicion. Some looked at him as if he were dangerous, unpredictable, a wild animal chained beside their leader. Serenia sat quietly in her private chamber, silver light spilling across her form. She had not spoken much since the battle. She had simply watched the guards, watched the ship's broken systems, and most of all, watched him. When Arik finally entered, her gaze lifted to meet his. "You should rest," she said softly, her voice smooth as running water. "I'll rest when you're safe," Arik replied. His voice was firm, but his body betrayed him with the faint tremor of exhaustion. For a moment, silence hung between them. Then Serenia rose from her seat and walked closer, her movements graceful, almost otherworldly. She stopped only a step away, her eyes searching his face. "You wonder why I chose you," she said. Arik said nothing. He had wondered since the first moment, but hearing the words from her lips made his chest tighten. Serenia looked past him, toward the stars outside the window. "The Vayari Empire is old, too old. My people trust in power, in traditions carved from stone and steel. They believe courage comes from bloodlines, that honor belongs only to the ancient families. But when I studied humanity, I saw something different, something forgotten." Arik frowned slightly, his voice low. "And what did you see?" She turned back to him, her silver eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. "Fire, raw and untamed. A courage that does not come from blood or law or glory. You fight because you must. You protect not because you are ordered, but because you choose to. No logic, no reason, just will." Her words struck deep because he knew they were true. Humanity had survived endless storms, wars, and disasters, not because they were the strongest or the smartest, but because they refused to give up. That stubborn will was in their bones. But Arik shook his head. "That's not enough. Courage doesn't stop blades. Courage doesn't stop assassins." Serenia's lips curved in the faintest smile. Yet it did. Tonight it did. Her gaze softened, and for the first time Arik saw something fragile in her expression. Not the unshakable calm of a diplomat, but something human, something close to trust. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "You must understand. This mission is not only about me. If I live, if I reach the council, I can change everything. I can give humanity a place at the table. But if I die..." Her words faded, but the meaning was sharp as a blade. Arik's jaw tightened. He already knew the truth. That was why the assassins were here. This was not just politics. This was war fought in shadows. "You should have told your guards," he said. "They're afraid, but maybe they'd fight harder if they knew the truth." Serenia shook her head slowly. "Fear is poison, Captain. Already it spreads through them. If I tell them more, they will break. But you..." She looked at him with steady eyes. "You are different. You do not let fear control you. That is why I chose you. That is why only you can stand beside me." The words settled in his chest like fire. He had thought himself a pawn, a soldier forced into a game he did not understand. But now he realized she had chosen him, not by chance, not by mistake, but because she saw something in him that even he had not seen. Before he could answer, the ship trembled. The lights flickered again, plunging the room into brief darkness. Serenia turned sharply, her calm breaking for the first time. Arik moved instantly, weapon drawn, his eyes sweeping the shadows. The lights returned, but the warning was clear. The assassins were not finished. One of the guards rushed into the chamber, his face pale, his words rapid and panicked in the alien tongue. Serenia's eyes narrowed. She turned to Arik. "There has been another breach, deeper in the ship. They are already moving toward us." Arik tightened his grip on his weapon, ignoring the pain in his side. His heart pounded, but his voice was steady. "Then they'll have to go through me." Serenia's silver eyes shone brighter, reflecting the fire in his own. "Yes," she whispered. "That is why you are here." And in that moment, Arik understood. This was not only a mission. This was a test of humanity itself. The alarms finally screamed. This time the ship could not hide the truth. Red light bathed the corridors, sirens howling through the steel bones of the vessel. The air shook with distant explosions, the tremors growing stronger with every second. Captain Arik stood in front of Lady Serenia's chamber, weapon raised, his breath steady despite the fire in his wounds. He knew what was coming. This was no test strike, no hidden blade in the dark. This was the full attack. The guards scrambled into formation, their faces pale, their voices loud with fear. They shouted in their tongue, weapons shaking in their hands. Auric's sharp eyes read them easily. They were not ready. They were breaking already, their courage draining away like water through cracked stone. He could not depend on them. Not now. The first blast tore open the forward door, spraying sparks like rain. Black-armored assassins poured through faster and fiercer than before. Their glowing blades cut through the air with deadly grace. The guards fired, but their shots were wild, desperate. 2 assassins cut them down within seconds, their bodies collapsing at Serenya's feet. Auric moved without hesitation. His weapon cracked, his shots sharp and precise. 1 assassin fell, then another, but there were too many. He threw himself forward, placing his body between Serenya and the storm of killers. His side burned, his arm ached, but he did not slow. Every step was a fight against the pain, against the fear, against the impossible. Serenya did not move. She stood tall, her silver eyes calm even as the world around her turned red with blood. She trusted him completely, and that trust lit fire in Auric's heart. An assassin lunged, blade flashing toward her throat. Auric caught the strike with his arm, the edge slicing deep, but he twisted, drove his knife into the attacker's ribs and shoved him down. Blood sprayed across the floor. Another came from behind. Auric spun, firing point blank, the blast lighting the chamber like lightning. The guards faltered again, retreating toward the walls. Auric's voice roared across the chaos. "Stand and fight. If she dies, you all die." His words were raw, not in their language, but in tone and fury, and somehow it cut through their fear. Slowly, desperately, they raised their weapons again. Still, the assassins pressed harder. More poured in, slipping through broken doors and vents. Shadows multiplied until it seemed the entire ship was drowning in enemies. Auric fought at the center, his body moving faster than thought. Every slash, every shot was another second bought for Serenya. His muscles screamed, his breath came ragged, but his will only burned brighter. A blade pierced his shoulder. He did not fall. A strike tore across his side. He stayed standing. Blood dripped down his armor, staining the floor beneath him, but his eyes never left the assassins. His defiance was unshakable, and something strange happened. The guards, who once cowered, began to follow his lead. They shouted, firing with more focus, charging into the fight. His courage was aflame, and it spread. For the first time, the assassins slowed, pressed back by resistance stronger than fear. Yet the enemy leader had not moved. He stepped into the chamber at last, tall and silent, his mask gleaming black. His blade glowed brighter than the others, humming with energy. Auric felt the weight of his presence instantly. This was no common assassin. This was the one who had planned it all. The guards froze again under his gaze. Even Serenya's calm wavered. The leader advanced slowly, each step echoing in the chamber. Auric stepped forward to meet him, blood dripping from his wounds, his weapon shaking but still raised. Their blades clashed with a sound like thunder. Sparks lit the chamber, shadows twisting around them. The assassin struck fast, his blade a blur, but Auric blocked, countered, and pressed forward. His body screamed in pain, but his will was steel. Every strike he made was fueled not by strength alone, but by a fire no alien could understand. The leader drove his blade into Auric's side. Pain exploded, but Auric roared, pushing forward, tackling him to the ground. With a final burst of fury, Auric drove his knife into the assassin's mask, shattering it. The figure twitched, fell still. Silence crashed over the chamber. Auric staggered to his feet, barely able to stand. His vision blurred, his breath shallow. Blood soaked his armor, dripping onto the broken floor. But he stood.
He had not fallen. Serenya stepped forward, her silver eyes wide.
She reached out, steadying him with her hand. For the first time, her voice trembled. "You should be dead." Auric forced a faint smile, his voice rough. Humans don't die easy. The guards watched in stunned silence. They had seen it with their own eyes. One human standing where they had faltered, one human defying death itself. Serenya looked at Auric, and something unspoken passed between them. Respect, trust, and something deeper, she whispered almost to herself. They will never understand, but I will make them. The alarm still howled, the ship still burned, but for now Serenya lived. For now, the human still stood. The ship drifted through the endless dark, broken and scarred from the battle. Fires had been put out, doors sealed, and the bodies of the assassins thrown into the void. The silence that followed was heavy, like the breath before a storm. Captain Arik sat against the wall of the chamber, his armor stained with blood, his body aching from wounds that should have killed him. Yet he was alive. Alive because he refused to die, because he refused to let Lady Serenia fall. Serenia stood at the center of the chamber, her silver robes torn, her calm face shadowed by thought. Around her, the alien guards whispered again, but their voices were different now, no longer filled with doubt, no longer sharp with scorn. They spoke in awe. They had seen what Arik had done. They had seen him bleed and fight when they themselves had faltered. But Serenia knew what this meant. This was more than survival. This was proof. Proof that courage did not belong only to ancient bloodlines. Proof that humans new to the stars had something even her empire had forgotten. She walked toward Arik, her steps slow, deliberate. He lifted his head as she stopped before him. His face was pale, his breath shallow, but his eyes still burned with the same stubborn fire. "You should be resting," she said softly. "I'll rest when you're safe," he replied, his voice low but steady. Serenia's gaze lingered on him, as though she were searching for something deeper. "Do you understand what you've done?" she asked. Arik frowned. "I protected you. That's all." She shook her head. "No, you did more than that. You changed everything." Before he could answer, the ship's comms activated. A cold voice spoke in the Veyari tongue, announcing their approach to the capital. The guards straightened, their fear returning at the thought of facing the High Council. Serenia turned toward the window, where the distant lights of the Empire's world grew brighter with each second. "Listen to me, Captain Arik," she said, her voice sharp now, carrying weight. "When we land, my people will not welcome you. They will see only a human weak and unworthy. They will call you a mistake. But I will not let them. I will stand before the council and speak the truth. What you showed here cannot be ignored. You bled for me, and through you humanity has earned its place." Arik's eyes narrowed. "And if they don't listen?" Her silver gaze hardened. "Then I will force them." The words struck him with the force of a blade. Serenia, calm and careful Serenia, was preparing to break the very laws of her empire, for him, for humanity. He wanted to argue, to tell her it was too much, too dangerous, but the look in her eyes silenced him. She had already decided. Hours later, the ship descended toward the shining towers of the Veyari capital. Its spires stretched like spears into the sky, glowing with cold light. The landing bay was filled with armored guards, their weapons gleaming, their eyes fixed on the arriving vessel. Serenia stepped forward, her head high, her presence commanding. Arik followed, limping slightly but refusing to show weakness. The whispers began immediately. A human at her side, blood still on his armor? The council chamber was vast, its ceiling lost in shadow, its walls lined with ancient symbols of power. The councilors sat on their thrones, tall figures cloaked in authority, their eyes sharp with judgment. Serenia walked to the center, her silver form radiant in the cold light. Arik stood just behind her, every muscle tense, every instinct screaming that he did not belong here. A councilor's voice rang out, deep and accusing. "Lady Serenia, you arrive with a wounded human at your side. Explain yourself." The chamber fell silent. All eyes turned to her. Serenia raised her head, her voice clear and steady. "This human saved my life, again and again. While your guards faltered, while assassins struck, he stood alone. He bled for me. He fought when logic said he should fall. And because of him, I stand here now." Murmurs rippled through the chamber, sharp with disbelief. Another counselor leaned forward, his voice harsh. "You speak of chance. A lucky survivor. Nothing more." Serenia's eyes blazed, brighter than ever. "No, I speak of truth. I speak of courage. You call humans weak, unworthy. But this man proved otherwise. He showed me that strength is not in bloodlines, not in titles, but in will, in choice, and I will not let you ignore it." The chamber shook with outrage, voices rising in protest. No one had spoken like this in centuries. No one had dared. But Serenia stood tall, unflinching. Arik's hand tightened on his weapon. He could feel the hostility pressing against him like a storm. Yet when he looked at her, he saw no fear, only fire. In that moment, Arik understood. This was more than politics. This was a rewrite of the galaxy's rules. Serenia was tearing down walls built over thousands of years, and she was doing it for him, for humanity, and nothing would ever be the same again. The council chamber had never been so loud, Voices clashed like thunder echoing off the high walls. Some counselors shouted in anger, demanding punishment for Serenya's defiance. Others argued with quieter fear, warning that breaking the laws of the Empire would bring chaos. But through it all, Lady Serenya stood firm, her silver form glowing like a star at the center of the storm. Captain Arik remained behind her, battered and bleeding, but unshaken. He was no politician. He did not understand the endless games of words and power, yet he understood the way they looked at him, with scorn, with disbelief, with hatred. To them, he was not a hero. He was a flaw, a mistake that threatened their order. Serenya raised her hand and the chamber fell silent. Her voice carried with steady fire. I will not let this council blind itself. You speak of order, of bloodlines, of tradition, but traditions did not save me. Bloodlines did not fight for me. When assassins struck, it was not your laws that kept me alive. It was him, a human, a soldier with no name in your records, no claim to glory. He fought when none of you would. He stood when even my guards faltered, and if you dismiss that, then you dismiss truth itself. Gasps echoed through the chamber. No one had ever spoken against the council with such boldness. The elders shifted uneasily on their thrones. Some whispered of betrayal, others of madness. One counselor rose, his cloak heavy with jewels. His voice was sharp like a blade. You risk everything for one man? For one human? You would break the laws of our empire for this? Serenya's eyes burned brighter. Yes, because laws mean nothing if they blind us to courage. If they cannot see worth where worth is proven, then they are chains, not laws, and I will break those chains. The chamber erupted again, but her words were already spreading like fire. The guards in the shadows, the servants along the walls, even the younger counselors, many of them stared not at Serenya, but at Arik, at the human who stood silent, scarred, and unyielding. Arik felt the weight of their stares. He did not want power, did not want to be a symbol, yet somehow without choice he had become one. He had come as a protector, and now he was the spark of something far greater. After hours of furious debate, the council gave its answer. The decision was not unanimous, but Serenya's will could not be ignored. For the first time in history, humanity was granted recognition, a voice, a place at the table of the stars. The old laws were rewritten, not for treaties, not for trade, but because one human had proven himself with blood and fire. When the council was dismissed, Serenya led Arik out of the chamber. The city stretched before them, towers of glass and steel glittering under the twin suns. Crowds had gathered, their voices rising with curiosity. Rumors were already spreading of the human who had fought for the diplomat, of the human who had changed the council's mind. Serenya stopped on the steps, turning to him. Her silver eyes softened, her voice low so only he could hear. Do you understand what you have done? Arik shook his head. I only did my duty. Her lips curved into a faint smile. No, Captain. You gave your people a future. You gave them a legacy. For a moment, silence hung between them, heavy with meaning. Then Serenya stepped forward to face the crowd, her presence commanding. This is Captain Arik of humanity, she declared, her voice echoing across the plaza. He protected me when no one else would. He stood alone against the dark, and because of him, I will fight for his people as he fought for me. The crowd erupted, their voices carrying through the city. Some cheered, others gasped, but none could deny what they had heard. Arik stood quietly at her side, uneasy under the weight of so many eyes. He had never sought fame. He had never sought history, yet here he was, a soldier who had only wanted to protect, and now a symbol of humanity's courage. That night, as stars burned above the Empire's capital, Arik sat alone, staring at the horizon. The war was not over. He knew the assassins were only the beginning. Enemies would rise again in shadows and in power. His survival had changed the balance of the galaxy, and change always created new foes. But he also knew this. Humanity was no longer ignored. Their voice had been written into the laws of the Empire. Their courage had been carved into its history. And though the road ahead would be dangerous, the first step had been taken. Arik closed his eyes, exhaustion pulling him down, but his heart steady. Whatever battles came next, he would face them. Because he had already learned the truth, sometimes one life, one choice was enough to rewrite the stars.